It's just a phase. They, your picky eaters, will grow out of it and they'll be fine. But are they getting the nutrition that they need? And is it really just a phase? Welcome to Womenfolk Revival, where we are deeply rooted and wildly intentional. I'm Maggie.
And I'm Mira. Today on Womenfolk Revival, we're sitting down with Lena Livinsky. Lena is a holistic pediatric feeding specialist and speech language pathologist who's helping mothers move out of pressure and into trust. Lena, we're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for
Yes,
having me.
welcome.
I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise. So let's go ahead and get into the story behind the mission and what you do on a daily basis. She is frozen. Yeah.
You guys got
Oh,
really choppy for a
no.
second. Am I choppy?
Oh,
Okay.
nope, there you
Okay.
are.
For a
No,
second, like
you're
you were
back. You were
robotic, but I
frozen.
heard the question, which is good.
Okay.
Okay, because I'm not just like sitting here like sorry. I was just like, oh, where we go. Okay. Um, yeah. So I've been a speech language pathologist for 14 years now, which is crazy to think about, and I got into the space because I wanted to work with people in a way that helps. And speech came into my life. It was something I heard about my junior year of college because I really didn't have direction of what I wanted to do. And that field kind of presented itself. And it was interesting enough where I felt like, okay, well, this is really cool because I get to maybe work with kids with disabilities or adults with disabilities. So I thought, okay, this is like a great field. I think I can go into it. Um, but I've always had this kind of feeling where I want it to be a little bit more medically based, or I wanted to help with healing as well. So initially, I wanted to bridge that by working in a hospital setting as an SOP. And I thought I would never want to work with kids just because I was never like the fun person blowing bubbles and things like that. And I was like, it sounds awful. I don't want to do this. Like, I'm not doing that. So I was like, adults, adults, adults. But then as I went through school, I did my 2 years of grad school, I started to work in pediatrics because that's where I could get a job. There is a lot more openings in the pediatric space than an adult space. And I thought, okay, well, I'll eventually transition. But I really never did. Eventually, I started to fall in love with the pediatric field. So I stayed there. And my only bridge really with pediatrics was feeding. So I started to really get into it and I started to be passionate about it. And I started to really like the field. And all my schooling that I did, any continuing education that I did was always kind of feeding oriented because like I said from the beginning, like I never really liked working with that language aspect of like just excited play and stuff like that. It was just never my thing. So that was kind of my bridge. Um, and I worked in as a feeding specialist for a long time, but with this perspective that I learned in school and at work, which is very behavioral based. We do look at the oral motor component and swallowing component of feeding, which is a big part here often.
Mhm.
But everything else that was kind of looking at the whole body, the whole child, that was never taught to me in any way, shape, or form. But then I had my son who turned out to be a picky eater. So w- tried all my behavioral approaches. I tried to get him to get excited about food. I tried to redirect him. I tried to do some positive reinforcement, some negative reinforcement. I tried to make food fun and present it in different ways. And I failed miserably. I mean, nothing was working for him. None of these approaches were appropriate. And that's essentially what I did with most of my clients because that's what I learned, kind of like an ABA based feeding
Mhm.
therapy. That's what's recommended oftentimes. I mean, I'm sure people have different approaches, but this is like the general traditional approach. Um, so it wasn't working. And it was interesting to me, I think, because I was dealing with postpartum depression and things in the midst of all of that, where I wasn't clearly thinking about this. So it took
Mhm.
me a little while to connect this approach, which is holistically based. And this is something that I've been studying for years for my own autoimmune issues and things like that. I went through so many different diets and lifestyle changes trying to heal from psoriasis and some other issues. So I it was interesting how I didn't connect it at first, but eventually I did, where I was like, well, why am I not looking at him like that? Why am I
Mhm.
not trying different things
Mhm.
that could be possibly contributing here? Maybe it's diet, maybe it's something else. So I started to dig in, I started to research, I started to look at the literature, and start to learn more about the gut and start to learn more about what's underneath picky eating, what are some root causes, and I started to bring it all together. And yeah, and I've been passionate about it ever since because it made a difference in my child and many different clients I've worked with. Because I really do think picky eating needs to have this root cause approach because it's just a symptom. It's a symptom of
Mhm.
something else happening in the body. So I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, it
I
does.
know what there.
It's pretty amazing how everything just aligned so perfectly for you, just leading you
Mhm.
into that one direction. What was that initial aha moment for you when you realized that biology had to become before behavior?
So I was actually feeding my son dinner, and
Mhm.
it was something he has had before. It was just chicken with avocado, stuff that was a safe food, because
Mhm.
he was picky, like I said. So we weren't super exciting with trying different things. It was just his safe food. So it was chicken
Mhm.
and avocado, stuff he's had before. And he took a bite of it that night or that evening and he spit it out again. So I was like, oh, like, what is going on? I got so frustrated there and I was really ready to blow at him because I was dealing with my own like burnout
Mhm.
and working
Mhm.
all day and just trying to survive as a mom.
Mhm.
And I looked at him, I remember, and I just finally saw him. And I was like, well, you're not trying to be a little brat. You're stressed as hell right now. Like
Mhm.
he was so stressed out in that moment. I could see it in his body and he was waiting for my reaction. Um, and he gagged with the chicken too. And there were so many different things happening at once. And I was like, you're not
Mhm.
trying to be difficult. Like,
Mhm.
so I started to think about this, like, what is underneath all of this? What's causing you so much stress, buddy? And that was kind of like my moment, this realization, just finally connecting the dots when I looked at him and in that situation.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
I've had so many of those moments and I've never stopped to myself and thought about it in that way. I'm so perplexed because I have two picky eaters and they eat, let's just say 5 different things. And then all of a sudden one day they they just throw one out and won't eat it anymore. And I'm like, but this is your favorite. You love this, and I always make it for you. And it just ends, and they won't replace it with anything. And then now they're down to 4. But I've never stopped to think,
Mhm.
something is going on with them. I just think this picky eating is becoming even pickier, and
Yeah.
it drives me crazy.
And for everyone to know, Maggie, how old are your picky eaters currently that you're still going through this with?
um, 8 and almost 5. My
Mhm.
middle child will eat anything.
Yeah.
I and they've all been raised, the same way, and
Yeah.
I don't know. But I do
Yeah.
know, I don't want to get into this just yet because I do want to touch base on something that we spoke about in our meeting with you, Lena, and that is when you brought up environmental factors that are also coming into play with children and causing them to be picky eaters. So can
Yeah.
you tell us more about that and how our modern life is preventing our children and their bodies growing and thriving the way that they were designed
Mhm.
to?
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a lot to say there, and it's hard to even touch on everything. But we come into contact with about 80,000 different chemicals every single day, right? Whether it's
Yep.
the stuff
Mhm.
they're spraying from the sky, whether it's our furniture, whether it's our food, whether it's, just the water, the air. There's just so many different ways, our clothing.
Mhm.
There's just not enough regulation to keep the bad things out. There's not enough regulation.
Mhm.
And I think we sometimes don't connect the dots that this is causing a chronic disease epidemic in our kids, right? We're overusing antibiotics.
It's
We
huge.
are Um, encouraging C-sections, which I know we're gonna touch on later. We're encouraging it
Mhm.
Yeah.
because it's convenient oftentimes, that's not
Mhm.
always the case, but, I just spoke to a mom at a birthday party 2 weeks ago, and she was like, I'm really stressed about birth, so I have my C-section scheduled already." And I'm like, "Oh," so
Yeah.
much to say, but it's not always a time and place to bring it all up. Um, there's a lot of repercussions because of the way that we live,
Mhm.
and the stress. I feel like the lifestyle, we as humans, as women, we are wired to live in a community, to have help from other people, not to be working in a 9 to 5 and then
Mhm.
caring for our kids in the midst of it or after school or whatever it is.
Mhm.
I feel like we have been taking that kind of away, that biological need that we have as women to take care of our kids and to have a household. Oftentimes it's not an option anymore.
Mhm.
And I think that puts us into fight or flight. And then that further transfers over to our kids in some way. So
Oh, yeah.
it's just the environment. It's very different from what kids are biologically wired into need, right? Like kind of to have this nuclear family near them, especially mom, to really help them. So I just feel like the environment in general, it's not meant to be for raising healthy kids and happy kids anymore. And every household is different.
Mhm.
There's just so many different things that we need to be thinking about now to mitigate some of these things,
Right.
right? And we
Yeah.
have some amazing moms who are very aware and who are trying their hardest. But it's just, I feel like the world is a little bit, not to sound grim, but it's a little bit against us.
It's
I think
totally.
it's very against us. I stay at home with my children
Um,
and homeschool, so we have a slower
yeah.
paced life than
Pace
most
life, yeah.
people, but
Hmm.
I still feel the stress every day that I'm not contributing to the income, and I and my husband, obviously wants me home because we don't want our kids in school and we don't want them in daycare.
Hmm.
But it's a constant stress of doing everything on my own and making sure the house works and it's clean and the kids are fed and taken care of. And it's a struggle of feeding them because I've got two picky eaters that just won't eat
Yeah.
anything. And how can I, and I'm coming up with all these recipes, like how can I sneak more into these
Hmm.
specific foods? And then it's more time consuming. And
Yeah.
there's so much, even if you do stay home with your children and live that sort of life, there isn't the community. And,
Mhm.
the world
Yeah.
doesn't talk about that.
And
Yeah.
that's why we're here. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Lena, because Maggie and I can't stress enough in all of our podcast episodes that this is what we're here for. We're here to help build that community, to try and help take
Mhm.
some of that ease off of other mothers. And even if you're not a mother, other women in general, because the
Yeah.
pressure from society is just so great that it just keeps compressing down on us. And my lifestyle is a bit different. I work 52 hours a week. I'm a nurse and I work third shift. And my husband is now transitioning from a 312s on the weekend to who will be working all week, Monday through Friday. So I too am taking care of the kids, trying to homestead, they're not in school, they're in online school, but trying to transition them even out of online school. And now I have to transition into a new position. So it's nuts. And this
Mhm.
transferring of stress from parent to child is
Mhm.
real. And you can see
Mhm.
that in their diet and you see that in their, you know, and how they handle things, the mental load they take on, which I also think has a lot to do with how they are able to digest things and, as far as eating goes. But yeah, it's crazy. There's no village. We're trying to build the village.
We need it.
So
We
yeah,
really
we
need it.
do.
Yeah. It gives us safety, right? And once
It
mom feels
does.
safe, then that you are really like the mama duck, right? In the house. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
the one who sets the tone for so many different things
We
in
are.
the house, like how it flows, the energy, how it
Mm-hmm.
flows. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's so
Mhm.
important to have that as a woman.
It really is.
Yeah.
Maggie, you wanted to
And
touch
the
base
skills
on
to actually
C-section.
follow it through. Yes, I do.
Yes.
Um, because so like I said, I have two picky eaters. I have three children and two of them are And all three of my nieces were, who are older than my children. And my mom and my sister and my sister-in-law, they're like, oh, it's just a phase. Our kids went through that too. And, they just grow out of it. And then when we spoke, you mentioned the cesarean. And I'm like, wait a minute. All of my nieces were born from cesareans, and all of mine were as well. So that to me right there just says obviously there's a connection, and it has to do with the gut essentially from that. Can you
Yeah.
tell us more about that?
Yeah. Well, when babies are born naturally, they go through the vaginal canal, and there are birth microbes that are in that moment being planted from the mom. And in when you have kind of people in perfect health, which they're still out there, not in the Western world, unfortunately. It's very rare to have them in the Western world, but there's ancient tribes who still live off the land and they've preserved their culture and they kind of stay with how they have lived for thousands of years. These people have perfect health. They're being studied, and so they might have 200 birth microbes. That's ideal, around 200. But for us as women, we perhaps might not have as many, but still, as the baby is born, you're planting these microbes and collecting them and introducing them to your body as a baby. And the birth microbes is really what's crucial for us for our health because they have so many different functions that they play within our body, just so many different ones. There is about 200 of them, and each one of them has countless functions of what it does for our health in general. So I feel like because of the C-section, unfortunately, kids, they're losing their birth microbes. They're just not being passed on from mom to baby. And because of it, the gut is impacted, right? Because
Hmm.
a healthy gut, I feel like we're just in the infant stages of understanding what it really means
Mm-hmm.
for us. And we have so many microbiomes, right? It's not just the gut. Like our skin has a microbiome, our eyes have a microbiome, our lungs have a microbiome. So there's so many microbes within our body that we need to have. And the birth microbes are really, really crucial. So when you are born without them, you're essentially already setting yourself up for poor health in some way. Um, so, and not to sound so grim, where whoever had a C-section, baby or came as a C-section, like you're going to be sick for the rest of your life. No, there actually scientists and providers that are working on trying to replant some of those, and some of them, unfortunately, when they're airborne, like they die. So there is a lot of science that needs to go into it. But there is some that you already can replant, which is amazing. But I do think because of that microbiome, which is unfortunately already affected from birth, then down the road we're seeing these issues, and some of them may manifest as picky eating.
So,
Um,
Lena, I have a quick question for those who don't understand how we transfer those microbiomes. From what I understand, another thing, my firstborn, he ended up having some issues. He had apraxia. He had traumatic birth, and that was vaginal. I had 5 births following that due to shoulder dystocia, having to have cesareans, and I did try to have a VBAC, but that wasn't possible. One out of all my kids are picky eaters, but that's not what I'm getting at. My question is, for those who don't understand microbiomes, I do understand, from what I understand, when we come out vaginally, our head, when the baby comes out, the head, goes overlaps, and there's like a rush of probiotics for one that goes through their body that they're missing when we have cesareans. Two, the
Mm-hmm.
microbiomes you're talking about, is that when they're coming out vaginally that they get those microbiomes when coming through the vagina, through the birth canal? If you
mhm.
could just, so I just wanted to explain that a bit so that people would understand, because they might be like, well, how are you transferring those microbiomes to the kids?
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
a good question. I don't know exactly. It's not my area of expertise. But as you said, like if you think about this, when the baby goes through the vaginal canal, the canal
Mm-hmm.
is pretty long. So
Mm-hmm.
along the way, there's a lot of probiotics and microbes that they are able to um, digest or come in contact with through the
Mm-hmm.
skin. Right? As you're going through it. When you
Uh-huh.
have a C-section, first of all, you're getting antibiotics, right? So you already are
Mhm.
at a disadvantage there because you already are killing some of these
Killing
microbes
everything.
or putting them to sleep, essentially. Some of them are able to be brought back later, but
Mhm.
you already are at a disadvantage because you're already getting antibiotics, which is preventative, which is understandable, but then you're also not going through a birth canal, so you're not
Right.
able to get any of these probiotics that are there, the birth
Mhm.
microbes that are specifically I just feel like our bodies were created perfectly by God,
They
and this
sure
is how it
were.
was
Yes, they were.
designed to happen. So when we are being pulled from, the stomach, it's just very different.
I don't recommend it. I
Oh my god.
had a my
Yeah.
I can't remember which child it was, but when I went in and they said, "Well, you're gonna need to go and have a C-section. We're not gonna do VBAC. There's no chance that we would even do it." She said, "Well, this nurse or the doctor herself said, "Well, I've never had kids and I would never have a vaginal delivery. I would always opt for a C-section." Well, for one, that was terrible bedside manners because here I am, emotional, not being able to ever have that chance again. And
Yeah.
two, you guys, no, you have no idea, for those of you who have not had children yet, or, who are planning on having a C-section, all that goes through. That is a major surgery. They're cutting through so many layers of
Mhm.
skin. But for those who have to, you shouldn't feel ashamed either because you're still
Oh,
giving
no.
birth. It's still life you're giving
Yeah.
birth to. But that's not
Yeah.
something that I would elect, like, at all. It's very
I
Right.
would not
dangerous.
wish a cesarean on my worst enemy.
Oh,
It is
Yeah.
absolutely
Oh God.
horrific,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
no,
And
there's
then you have
just
like a few weeks, maybe, for recovery in this country, if you're
yeah.
lucky, right? I don't
yeah.
understand
Yes.
the women who don't have time off and then they have to go back to work
Yep.
after cesarean. I'm just like, so many things. But I do want to say one thing though. I had a home birth with my son.
How
Yeah.
blessed.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was it
wow.
was it was great. And he's my only one so far. So it's rare for a first timer to have a home birth. It was very long. I was exhausted, but it worked out.
Mm-hmm.
But he still was a picky eater though, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily a
Just
measure
C-section.
of
Mm-hmm.
just a C-section
Mhm.
for a child to be picky or have different chronic
Sure.
issues. I think because he came from my microbiome, which was missing a bunch of stuff
Mm-hmm.
because before I had him, I was vegan for 3 years, which I'm not
Oh,
gonna get
wow.
into that,
Okay.
for too long, but that for me, it ruined my health. So I didn't have enough time to recover. I think I had about a year, and I didn't know what I was doing in that time to even rebuild my microbiome. And also at that time, I thought, that I didn't need to supplement anything because I was getting everything from food. I wasn't taking any prenatals
Mm-hmm.
or any type of supplementation. I was not going outside in the sun. I was just not prepped for birth. So I think that's why I had such this is just my idea. That's why I had such bad postpartum depression. And I think that's why my son is having some chronic issues right now too, just because I wasn't ready for him and I gave him everything I had. And it wasn't too much.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
I do think yeah.
I do know that for women who've had chronic depression prior to getting pregnant, are more prone to having postpartum depression after they have
Yeah.
their children. I
I
do know
didn't
that.
have depression before though. I
Yeah.
think yeah.
Well, I think postpartum
So
depression, I think everybody has a touch of postpartum depression in one way or
mm,
another. It just depends on how you're able to handle it
yes.
because my gosh, having children is
Oh,
hard. But mine was
yeah.
amplified almost to the point where I felt like I needed to go back on antidepressants, and they said it was most likely amplified by that because of you having a prior history of depression, which makes sense. But
It
also, I
does.
wanted to bring up the fact real quick that Maggie, you don't eat much meat either, right?
I don't, and I will say I years ago, I guess probably about 9 years ago, I my husband, and we had tried for 5 years to get pregnant, and I was not getting
Wow, yeah.
pregnant, and then I went on a plant-based diet, and, several months into that, we were not trying to get pregnant anymore. I got pregnant,
Mhm.
and I think and I've never felt better in my entire life than
Yeah.
when I was on this, but I will say I despise the carnivore diet because I'm not a huge meat person, and that just sounds
Mhm.
gross, and I just
I
think,
do that.
what did God intend? And I don't think God intended for us to eat nothing but meat. And I don't think that plants are trying to kill us.
I
But
think we have all the stuff in here.
I will say that those diets, I think, can be very good for you in short periods of time. But
Mhm.
I think the
Cycles.
biggest reason, yeah, but I think the biggest reason for that is because you're cutting out all of the processed foods and you're cutting
Yeah,
out all of
exactly.
the added
Sure.
sugars and
Mhm,
things and, all of
mhm.
the crap that we should not be eating. So if we just
Yeah.
stuck to, you know, a plant-based diet mixed with a carnivore diet, then we'd probably be, good to go, right?
I keep trying to
Yeah.
get her to eat meat, but here at Womenfolk
I eat
Revival, we're
meat.
all about
Yes, it's gross
she
to have a
does.
lot in your body.
We're all about simplicity and connection here. So,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
can a busy mom implement feeding our children without feeling overwhelmed? Like, what is the hands-on system that you found that actually works?
That's a really good, question, and I don't know if you're gonna love my answer, Maggie. Um
Meat.
Oh, animal-based stuff for sure as
Oh,
a basis. Yeah, it's true though.
protein.
It's true.
Mhm.
So when I was working through my own health issues, I started on the GAPS diet, and it was a mixed diet. It wasn't just animal-based, but I started very heavily with the meat-based soup. And that soup was transformative for my health, and it has been for so many different people as well. Everybody has different dietary needs, but I
Mhm.
do believe our gut, our microbes, and just in general, our body, it thrives on meat because we're able to digest it very well. We're meant to have it. There are so many minerals and vitamins that are just nutritionally dense. What I
Mhm.
want is for us to have nutritionally dense food, to be the focus of the plate. Because with plants, what I'm finding is that, you know, of course, some of them are amazing. I do think there is a time and place, and they have different roles that they play. But I have started to learn so much about lectins in plants and oxalates in plants and different
Oxalates, yeah.
plant toxins. So that's my biggest issue with plants is that so many of them have these plant toxins that are unfortunately disruptive to our bodies. So this is why when you are trying to build up the reserves of different, um, things that you were depleted in. For example, zinc is big for picky
Mhm.
eaters. Typically, a lot of them are depleted in zinc. And I can even say with my son, I have been supplementing it with him specifically, and I see a huge difference when I
Oh, wow.
supplement.
A
Huge
huge
in terms of
difference
like
as far as what?
his sensory,
Okay.
his sensory problems, right?
Okay.
He used to be very sensitive to sounds and textures and everything else.
Mhm.
And once I start to supplement him, then, it's night and day difference. So, the
Oh,
richest
wow.
foods that have a lot of these minerals and vitamins that our kids are severely depleted in, typically as picky eaters, come most readily available from animal-based products, right? You're just
Is
never
there a
gonna have
specific
a
animal?
complete made for ones, like zinc oysters are the best thing. It's usually they're the richest in zinc, but how many kids are eating oysters? I'm not either. I try to, but it's just not my thing. But like red meat in general, I feel like it is just so nutritionally dense. So
Mhm.
for me, I like to talk about that. But sometimes even just the meat-based meat stock, it just has so many minerals, so many vitamins, collagen, and what's the second one? Let's see. For, collagen and keratin, and so many different things that are just so rich. I have to tell you, so for me personally, like I said, I had postpartum depression. And when I started to work on my health from that perspective, um, before that, my emotions were flat. Like I
Mhm.
was just not happy, not sad. It felt like robotic. 2 weeks of being on that meat stock, I started to feel highs and lows again of emotions.
Oh,
And
wow.
to me, it was like a reset button. So I don't think there's one particular best diet for one person that I would
No.
say, like, everybody be carnivore, everybody go on gaps. Like, no, but I do think it's something to consider just because of our biology. Like, we do not have to ferment and the food, animal-based food is just so absorbed within our body typically.
Mhm.
And there is nuance there. But like plants, they need to ferment and process. And
Mhm.
sometimes we're just not able to handle that.
Mhm.
So I do believe that's one of the biggest thing I would say to busy moms, like prioritize nutrient dense nutrition so we can really start to address some of these underlying factors that are
Issues.
causing picky eating.
Wow, that's amazing that you bring that up, actually. My husband is from the Middle East, and he is, like, obsessed with, um, s the stocks, like, we do beef. He'll slow cook the beef with the bones for 24 hours, like, it's a
Mhm.
thing, and then he's like, "Here, drink this." So after I had the baby, he's like, "Drink this stock," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"This is so gross. I don't wanna drink this stuff." He had it, like, in freezer and glass bottles. I'm like, "This is weird," but it's interesting you bring that up because I haven't had any issues after the last couple of times we've had our last 2 children, but here
Yeah.
I am drinking this beef stock and chicken
Yeah.
stock. For those parents who are like, "Well, I don't have time to think of this." Listen, if you put your food in a slow cook over day in some water and broth with some garlic and,
Yeah.
all that,
Mhm.
um, my kids are obsessed with this broth. So it
Yes.
it doesn't
Amazing.
take much out of you to prepare. Just throw it
Yeah.
in a pot with water and let it sit
Yeah.
overnight.
And it could be shorter than that too, because I think your
Yep.
husband's making bone broth, which is
Mhm.
amazing, so nutritionally
With
dense,
meat on it.
with meat
Yes.
on it, yes.
Mhm.
That is, however, a little bit harder to digest for some people who have gut issues than meat stock.
Mhm.
Meat stock is cooked a little bit less, so it's less histamine heavy.
Oh, so it
So
depends on the length. Because I do chicken noodle soup, but
yes.
I boil the heck out of it for 2 hours and then we eat it.
Yes,
Would that is that
exactly.
an
That's a
example?
meat
Okay.
stock, right,
Oh, okay.
and you wanna have a bone because it's different properties, and you wanna have some meat
Yeah, I
as
cook the
well.
whole chicken in there
Um,
and make that the stock, and
Love
then
it.
I add the, like,
Love it.
noodles
Add
and
in the
stuff.
organs, all of it. I know, Maggie, you're probably
I
like, "Oh
don't know
my
about all the
No,
organs.
they're all fine."
I eat meat and I eat all different I don't eat pork, but
Yeah, neither do
um
I.
I love meat. I love steak and burgers. I just can't have a lot of it in my body at one time. I could not
Yeah,
survive on just eating
yeah.
a
I
lot of
don't
meat.
want yeah, I don't think I could be carnivore either. I mean, maybe for short periods of time.
It gets
But
nasty
some
over
people
time. You
thrive
get
on
sick.
it. People thrive on
Yeah.
it. But then you have like these different ways of prepping carnivore. Like you make a carnivore pizza and carnivore bread and I mean there's dairy and different things that you can add in.
Well, Meg, you can
And
dabble
eggs.
in that because you're starting
Yeah.
to do recipes now for your kids who are picky, adding different things to, like, pizzas that you're making, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love I love carnivore pizza. It's so yummy.
my daughter is not a big meat eater. My son really isn't either. They'll have, chicken nuggets, which I hate giving them, but that's just one thing where I can get in a lot of protein.
Yeah.
But I want to start adding beans to, sauces and um the nutritional yeast you can add, and that's very nutrient dense. Spinach, chopping it up, hiding it in sauces, and just adding things in here and there. And we dry a lot of our vegetables that we grow and make them into powders, and we'll sprinkle that on as well.
Mhm.
Ground flax, chia seeds. So those are both very nutrient dense and
Yeah. But they also have a lot of toxins in them though. I would say spinach especially, it's so high in
Oh, really?
oxalates
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah.
it's one of the top oxalate foods out
Hmm,
there. So if I was to do greens, I
I
would
didn't
probably
think of
do like romaine lettuce or arugula or something. Uh,
Mhm.
like I don't think I'm gonna eat spinach should be made with dairy to neutralize some of the oxalates in it. Because that's the thing, like
Okay.
as our different ancient groups that are still out there, or they're not
Mhm.
ancient, they're still alive, but they've been kind of keeping up with
Passed
their
down.
traditions for so long.
Mhm.
They know how to neutralize some of these toxins. So the Incas in Peru, they knew how to neutralize the potatoes because they have to go through like a 5-step process to get the lectins out and
Hmm.
get different plant toxins out, right? And we do not know how to do that. that art of toxin neutralization has been lost. So that's why some of these foods become so toxic to us because we do not know how to
Wow.
handle them. So unfortunately, spinach is definitely one of those foods. Like in order to neutralize some of these toxins in it, because it's really high in toxins, you need to mix it with dairy. So like spinach cream, that was created for a reason. And it's not the perfect way to cook it either. But unfortunately, I feel like as we're getting sicker and sicker, these are the things we need to start to think about.
Looking into.
Do you
Yeah.
know
Didn't know
much
that.
about like wild greens? Like if I were to add, let's just say dandelion leaves, or do you know?
This
Mary's so funny.
Mary gets on me all the time. I'm obsessed with dandelions.
She's obsessed with dandelions.
I think my dad is too. Like he just made tea. He went to the MITSA conference with me. I think there's definitely uses for it. I don't know how high it is in oxalate content. Do you guys know Sally K. Norton?
Mm-mm.
She talks about oxalates a ton. Like plant toxins are her jam,
Okay.
essentially. So she has a book called Toxic Superfoods. And so she lists the different foods and how oxalate heavy they are and which are a lot less plant toxin heavy. And she talks about how to cook them and how to process them. And I think it's great because when you want to continue with the vegetables, and I do, I love my broccoli, I love my cauliflower, I love my carrots. I love carrots, but they can also be oxalate heavy. So I want to make sure I'm processing them correctly,
Okay.
and onions and garlic and stuff and knowing. So if I'm having a ton of onions or I'm sorry, carrots in a day, and I know they have oxalates in them, maybe I'm not going to have a sweet potato on top of it, which is another big offender, unfortunately. And I love sweet potatoes. The sweet
I'm at
potatoes
I'm at
and
a new
smoked fruit.
point where I just feel like I really know nothing about food.
Well, that's why
When
It
I
she's
can
feel like
here.
feel
I
like
was getting a
that.
handle on
It
it.
can feel like that. But you know
Yeah.
what? I always think about what did my grandparents do? Right? What did my great grandparents do? Because I feel like they knew, even though they knew so much less because they didn't have Instagram in front of them and Google, they knew so much more.
But they knew
They
how to not have
respected the
diseases.
land,
Yeah.
right? And I do think seasonal living is the biggest key. So if you are going to have strawberries, make it when they're available
In season.
around you. Make it
Okay.
when they're growing at local farms. So you're not getting them from Mexico in December. You
Right.
know, it's just that's a very different strawberry than the one I'm going to go pick in a
Sure.
farm next door. So I do think just being mindful of that because I know we're talking about overwhelmed moms and we're all, I feel like, overwhelmed moms. I don't know if there's a mom in the world who's not overwhelmed. If you are, please write me a letter. I want to
Yeah,
know
we need
more
your
about your
secret
life.
sauce.
Yes.
They're the ones
I
that
want to
are
know your
living in
secret.
those tribes you were speaking
They
of
are.
that still
They are.
live off the land and
They're
in
stressed too, but for
communities.
different reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like it's impossible. I mean, stress is also very motivating, right? It doesn't all have to be bad.
Yeah.
But I feel like essentially for the busy moms, really think about that. Making sure your plate is as nutrient dense as it can be. That means, don't neglect the animal based. Even if you don't love having a lot of meat, how about cooking your veggies in butter or in
Oh
Oh
ghee?
yeah.
gosh.
I'm heavy on the
A
butter.
ton of it. A ton of it,
I
right?
just gave my kid
Yeah.
a piece of butter with some Baja salt on it because she was begging me for it earlier. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Oh my God. My son craves butter like nobody's business. Like he
Yep.
could just have it by the pound. And here's a trick I've been doing because I can't find A2 butter. We want it to be from A2 dairy to be more ready to digest. It's just a little bit more nutrient dense. So I've been buying heavy cream from like a really
And
good
make it.
farm and I've been making my own.
Yep.
And it's been so good. Oh my gosh, so good.
It is really good.
But yeah, kids love it. And our kids will tell us they're craving things for a reason, right?
Yep, they tell us their body
And
type.
oftentimes it's unfortunately the bad guys in their gut telling them what they want to eat. But there is also these cravings because they're nutrient depleted. So you're like,
Right.
oh, okay, you want a lot of butter. Why? So
Yeah.
yeah, I hope
Maggie, you
this
want-
doesn't overwhelm you more. I'm sorry.
No, it didn't. Well, I think it did, but in a good sense of now we know where to
Yeah.
get more information and what to look for. And for the moms out there, don't stress about this. It's a lot. And even for us, it's a lot. Maggie and I, like Lena said, it just starts small. One
Yeah.
small thing goes a long
One
way.
small thing.
So,
Exactly.
Maggie, you
The
wanted
micro
to
steps.
ask, yes, you wanted to ask her about stepping out of pressure and back into trust.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. I keep thinking, what was the name that you mentioned? Sally K.
Sally K.
Oh, yeah.
Norton. She,
Norton.
yeah.
Okay.
I
Oh, Maggie will have her book by the end of the night. Maggie's a book lover.
You should. You should. It's very
Yes.
informative, and it's finally the information that I feel like it's not being shared by the
Mhm.
mainstream media. Why are they pushing so many
Sure.
veggies on us and so much
Right.
Yeah.
fruit? Why is that
Mm.
I
Yep.
always question the narrative a little bit. I
Mhm.
don't
Yes.
know.
We need,
So,
we're at that stage, and I think everyone's waking up to that where we just need to start questioning absolutely everything.
yeah.
So your work helps mothers step out of the pressure and into trust, but what does that look like to stop policing, the dinner plate and start connecting with our children during meal times? And is that a
Hmm.
big factor in helping them overcome picky eating?
Yeah. I think it is. I really do think so. For in my framework, like I talk about different areas we should be looking at, and I picture it
Mhm.
as a big tree, right? But at the trunk of that tree is connection. I really do believe when we're more connected with our kids, first of all, we're able to help them regulate better because we're starting to get a little bit on their level and really think about their particular needs. But also, we're starting to observe our kids better. So we're able to look at these symptoms that come up, like, why is my child craving butter every day at 3 or something like that? We're starting to connect things. Why does he have a rash after eating eggs? Like, where is that coming from? We start to kind of connect and observe. But when we do, and as moms, we have this very special bond with our kids. And it creates oxytocin in us when we're starting to
Mhm.
connect with them, whether it's through a hug or through getting on the floor and eye contact and playing with them. So it gives us the feel good chemical and it gives the baby, the child, the feel good chemical that
Mhm.
they're craving. Because once they're showing up at the table more connected, more relaxed, um, their nervous system is more regulated, they're going to show up at the table different versus when we're just kind of rushing and focusing on the food. Let me get the broccoli and the cauliflower and this in front of them. Maybe they'll try it today, and we're running, 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 running. That disconnection there, unfortunately, translates to our kids. And, oftentimes they'll come in with this kind of heightened state. And it's easy to say, I'm not always connected with my son the way I want to because sometimes I'm tired or overwhelmed. And sometimes I'm just like, oh,
Sure.
just sit down and eat something. And it's
Mhm.
coming from a person who's consciously thinking about this every single day. So
Right.
give yourself grace when you can connect and show up fully. Might not be every meal, might not be every day, but when you can, I really think you're going to see a difference.
Okay. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. As we close out today's conversation, we wanted to leave you with this. Nourishment is about so much more than vitamins on the plate. It's about peace in the room. If dinner feels like a battlefield tonight, just remember that tomorrow is a new day to slow down, listen to your child's needs, and trust the wisdom that was already placed inside you as a mother. I don't know why I'm so emotional all of a sudden. Good Lord. Because
She
I
does
love
Came
this
being
up
a
all the
mom.
hard.
time.
And it's Mother's Day weekend, so we're just a couple
Yes.
of crybabies on here. So if you aren't just feeding a belly, you're tending to a soul. So if you would like to dive deeper into Lena's work, she hosts monthly workshops. You host monthly workshops still.
Yeah,
Right?
I just had one yesterday. I'm probably gonna take
Okay.
a break next month, but they'll be back.
Okay, well, she's going to take a break, but she hosts monthly workshops and has an incredible free guide on how to end mealtime battles in 5 simple steps. You can find all of her guides, her podcast, and her website at lenalivinsky.com. We've linked that specific freebie in the show notes below. So until next time, keep reviving the old ways in your own modern home. And
Stay rooted and stay wild. Lena, thank you so much.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much
Stay
for
wild.
Thank you so much for having me.